Hi everybody, it is Maundy Thursday, and if you are not up to date on your Latin, I'll remind you what Maundy, M-A-U-N-D-Y, Maundy means. As you hear the word Maundy, maybe you begin to hear an English variation on it, mandate. And in a traditional context, if we were gathered in worship, the way the general flow of the service begins, it reminds us of God's commandment that we would love one another. And you remember the golden rule and so forth. But deeper than just the golden rule, and in the end, we've talked about this before, the idea that of all the commandments that exist within religious traditions, ultimately in Christianity, particularly through the words of Jesus, all the commandments, and there are many, even the 10, they're whittled down to 2, that we would love God and love our neighbor as ourselves, which, again, we've talked about the idea that sometimes it feels easier to love somebody else than it does to love ourselves. But it really does begin with our ability to love self, and if that's true and genuine, then we can love the other. So the point is that Maundy Thursday is Commandment Thursday, where we are reminded not only of this command that we would love God and love one another. I'm going to share a song in just a minute, but Jesus, rather than only giving us words, Jesus is about to show, in the most dramatic of ways, show how deeply God's love is for all of us, I say all of us and remind you all of us because for some people, Holy Week, and I came across this actually last week, saw this posted on Twitter, but the person who was posting this was reminding us, all of us, that Holy Week can be, has been, the most anti-Semitic week of the entire year. And even as we, if you go back and look at previous messages, the one for Sunday of the Passion, for the 5th of April, I talked about and used the song, Ah, Holy Jesus, to illustrate the idea that it wasn't just the Jews, as silly as that sounds, that crucified Jesus, that anytime we reveal our inability and our unwillingness to love God and love one another, we don't re-crucify Jesus, but in essence we deny the reality of the love of God. We spent part of the end of Lent, even under quarantine, talking about the idea of what real worship looks like. And it isn't a ritual, as we've come to sort of understand or express it. Real worship is just our ability to love God and love one another. And when we do that, when we faithfully do that, day in and day out, even in the midst of mistakes and challenges, seeking forgiveness and reconciliation, that's an expression of real love. Forgiveness and reconciliation, that's part of the process of real, genuine love. When we do that, that's real worship. And the good news about that idea, at least for all of us under quarantine, is that it's never too late, even in isolation, to do the work of loving, even if we're not surrounded by people right now. There are ways in which we can reconnect to one another, even under isolation. And in doing that, reconnecting, and out of that connectedness, loving, genuinely loving, we're worshiping. You can worship anywhere at any time just by virtue of how you choose to love yourself, to love God. And if you really love God, you're going to love all of the people around you, especially the ones that maybe for you are the most challenging to love. Anyways, on Maundy Thursday, not only are we reminded about this call to love, but Jesus is about to show it. And it begins with this Last Supper. We're in John's Gospel, chapter 13. Jesus is about to wash their feet, the feet of the disciples. And it's a wonderful story, right? And I know a lot of churches like to symbolically reenact this and wash one another's feet. And that's not bad, that's okay. But I've seen too many churches over the years that do the symbolic foot washing and then immediately go out and begin not loving the people in their own community as church and the people in their own community out in the world. And how about we save a foot washing and just focus on loving one another? But Jesus symbolically represents his own humility in loving these disciples by washing their feet and by sharing a holy meal with them, where we take, our expression of that in the Last Supper or Holy Communion, the Lord's table, the Eucharist, all those different ways to express the same basic idea that in sharing this meal together, we receive God's forgiveness. We talked about that already. And out of that reception of forgiveness, we are called and invited to go and forgive as an expression of love. Maundy Thursday is all about love, but not just talking about it or thinking about it, but doing it, showing. One of the things that always comes up in the gospel narratives is that, of course, all the time Jesus is performing signs, and sign after sign, the people still look at him and say, okay, Jesus, we get it, we see what you did, but if you show us another sign, then we'll really believe. Show us another one. So we're all sort of stuck in this cycle of always wanting more. Another sign. Proof to me. And Maundy Thursday is also about the ultimate proof, leading into Good Friday and culminating on Sunday, but real proof. How much do I love you? You're about to see. I'm about to show you how much I love you. So to get into that idea a little bit further before we end today, as I continue to sort of pull out these odd songs that maybe challenge you a little bit to think about how they're relevant to worship. Today's worship song comes from John Mayer, but it's totally relevant. Love is a verb. Love is a verb. It ain't a thing. It's not something you own. It's not something that you scream. When you show me love, I don't need your words. Love ain't a thing. Love is a verb. Love ain't a thing. Love is a verb. Love ain't a crush. It ain't an excuse. No, you can't get through love on a pile of IOUs. Love ain't a drug, despite what you've heard. Love ain't a thing. Love is a verb. Love ain't a thing. Love is a verb. You gotta show. show, show me, show me. Love is a verb. Yeah, you gotta show me, show me, show me. Love is a verb. Love ain't a thing. Love is a verb. Go show somebody how much you love them. Amen.